Okay, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amber Bedard, and I am the manager for the Indigenous Research Support Team, and will act as today's moderator. On behalf of the team members and those who had a hand in making today possible, we just want to extend a huge thank you for being here. We are grateful for this opportunity to highlight and share the work that we are doing with the Indigenous Research Support Team. But before we begin, we would like to start off with a territorial acknowledgement.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Van Patten, and I'm an Indigenous woman of Cree, Métis, and European descent, and a member of the Tall Cree First Nation, and I'm currently residing in Calgary, Alberta. I'll be providing the territorial acknowledgement where IRST is located, but I'd also like to recognize that some of us may be tuning in from different areas and would like to acknowledge the ancestral lands that you are situated on as well. Welcome. As a visitor of this land, I believe that it's important for me to provide an acknowledgement from my own heart and experience, recognizing the people in the place who have so generously shared their home with me over the past 12 years. I moved to Mohkinstsis in pursuit of higher education and learning. During my time here, much of what I've come to know about myself and the world around me has come from the land and the Treaty 7 people. For these incredible gifts, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the original peoples of this land, the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations, and the Métis Nation, Region 3. Without your heartfelt kindness and hospitality, I would certainly not be here with all of you today. Thank you. Hi.
Great, thank you so much, Kim. Next, we would like to welcome Elder Carrie Moore to open up the session in a good way. So in recognition of the request for Carrie's contributions today and for her guidance, we are gifting her broadcloth. We want to acknowledge her contributions in a good way, and so by doing so, we're partaking in this. So for those who are unfamiliar, broadcloth is connected to ceremony. Broadcloth is used in many traditional ceremonies and when offering prayers to the Creator. It's normally offered when participating in ceremonies such as pipe ceremony or sweat lodge ceremony, and of course depends on the nation and their protocol. Broadcloth has many different colors. Today we have red, white, blue, and yellow, and these are the colors of the 4 directions. So when offering broadcloth, we also offer tobacco. So when gifting broadcloth, it is expected that one cloth is about 1 meter in length. So in recognition of your efforts, Carrie, we would like to offer this to you and mail it later. Thank you so much, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Amber. I hope you can hear me. It says my speaker is not working. If it isn't, someone let me know. Anyway, thank you so much for the gifts of the beautiful print. I'm very honored by that and the tobacco. And thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here. It truly is wonderful to be able to support you in all of the good work that you are doing. So I would like to begin. Oki, Tansei, Tanshi, hello. Ni Tana Komuksanaki, Wakan Mihiganagakasqueo. My name is Carrie Moore, and I would like to do a blessing just to start everything off in a good way. Before I start, when I'm working with a new group, I do a very brief little story about the smudge. It is a Cree Métis creation story told to me by my grandmother, Ethel Bear, and hopefully it will you will like the story. So let me begin, and I'm going to really shorten this version, so because we have a very short time together. So long ago, Creator created the universe, the sun and the moon and the stars and the water and the plants and the animals, the trees, and he brought everything together in a circle. And he sat them in a circle so they could look at each other. Because when you look at each other, you are accountable and responsible to each other. And Creator gave all of those things in the universe gifts, their own unique gifts. And he gave all those things in the universe spirit, where they could hold all of those gifts. And he gave all of those things in the universe values, values of love and kindness and respect and compassion and honesty and accountability and responsibility and courage and all of the other values that we carry. He gave to everything in the universe. And Creator said to all of the things in the universe, the greatest gift I give you is the gift of you always remembering who you are. And Creator said, I'm going to bring another species here. They are the human beings. And the human beings will live here amongst you. And you will help the human beings with your gifts. And you will help the human beings, teach them who they are. Because the only species on earth that forgets who they are human beings. And you will be there to support them and guide them and bring them into their values, which is in their spirit. And so one of the little plants there in that circle came forward, and that was the tobacco plant. So I thank you for that tobacco, Amber, because that little tobacco plant said, I will offer myself to the two-legged so they can pray with me, so that I can offer respect to them, and all other things can offer respect to them when they ask with such in such a way. And we will teach the two-leggeds who they are again. And so when you offer tobacco to me, I thank you for that respect, and I offer my respect back to you. So Creator brought the two-leggeds here, and the two-leggeds, Creator gave them beautiful gifts, and Creator gave them all of the values in the world. And he placed them deep within their spirit, which is in their belly button, where we're attached to our mothers. And Creator said, two-leggeds are values. That is who they are, most of all. They carry all the values in the world, in the universe. And everything around you will help you remember that you are values. And so one of the little plants that we use in our medicines here in this territory, we use different medicines in different territories. I am from Saskatchewan originally. I've been here for 47 years. My family reserve is Muscadet, but I'm an elder also within the Métis nations of Alberta and Saskatchewan. And one of the medicines that we use to begin in a good way is sage, and I'm going to be using sage today. And so when we offer that tobacco to that sage plant when we were picking her, we say, thank you. I ask that you come with us. And that little sage plant was there in that circle, and the memories of the beginning is still passed down to them and to us. And that little tobacco plant knows when we offer, that little sage plant knows that when we offer tobacco, we are showing respect, and she wants to help us. So when I light this beautiful sage plant today, you will see that smoke rise. See this beautiful, beautiful smoke rising. Reach in and pull her to you. Put your hand out and hold her. Because when you put your hand over this beautiful spirit of the smoke is her spirit. And when you put your hand over her or reach out to her, your spirit becomes one with her spirit. And then you will remember who you are, just in case you've forgotten, because we're very busy every day. We have a lot of challenges in our lives. We're trying to focus on multiple tasks and our children and all of those things around us. And when we do that, we tend to come up into our heads. So everybody take a deep breath into your belly buttons. Come down into your spirit where you are attached to your mother. And now you carry only the values that we all carry. All of those behaviors and those thoughts, you can leave behind for a moment while we continue on with this wonderful time of speaking about research and really looking at the good things that we do. And we do this in a good way. So let me offer this blessing to all of us. Creator, giver of all life, grandmothers and grandfathers of all four directions, Mother Earth. Didisiya kasom wakamigina kakasquio, nitana komuksanaki. My name is Carrie. We ask, Creator, that you watch over us today. We ask that you guide us in a good way. We ask that our challenges be very gentle today. We ask, Creator, that whatever we do and wherever we go, we will always be safe. We ask, Creator, that you help us in the work that we do today and every day. We ask that the resources and supports be there for us. We ask that that gift of friendship and support be there to help us find our way when we are lost. We ask, Creator, that you watch over the University of Calgary and all of the staff and the students and the visitors who come here, that they will always feel safe, that they will always be treated with kindness and respect. We ask, Creator, that you watch over our families while we're absent from them. May they be surrounded by love and kindness and safety as well. And we ask that you watch over those that may be not feeling well today, or those in the hospitals. We ask, Creator, that you surround them with love and kindness and healing and family and support. May they be feeling better today because of that love and that kindness. We ask, Creator, that you continue to guide us in a gentle way. And we are truly grateful for your blessings. Miigwech. Hi. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Blessings to you.
Thank you so much for that opening and blessing, Carrie. We really appreciate your insight and your perspective. Next on the docket, we would like to welcome Dr. William Galley, Vice President Research, to bring remarks on behalf of the Office of the Vice President Research.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you everybody for, I noticed a very impressive turnout. Over 200 people have joined us online, so pleased to see that because this is a very important day here at the University of Calgary with the official launch of the Indigenous Research Support Team. Thank you, Carrie, for that very powerful opening blessing. And welcome everybody to today's important launch event. My name is Bill Galley. I'm the Vice President Research here at the University of Calgary. It is my pleasure to be here today to launch this essential new team that is part of the research portfolio here at the university. I'd like to thank our colleagues from Indigenous Engagement and the Indigenous Research Support Team for all of the preparation that has gone into today and for staging this important event. I would also like to thank Dr. Cora Voyager and Christina Kopp, who will be speaking shortly. We look forward to hearing you share your work with us. We are tremendously supportive of the Indigenous Research Support Team and what their work means for research at the University of Calgary. The creation of this team was a priority for our institution, and it aligns with three overriding priorities in our research plan. First, we seek to match strengths with opportunities. Second, we are constantly trying to increase research capacity. And third, we're trying to drive innovation through the work that the university does. This IRST team is a wonderful example of matching our institutional strengths with opportunities. Institutionally, I think many of you know, we have a strong Indigenous strategy in place under the leadership of our colleague, Michael Hart, and the Indigenous Engagement Team. Atapatope acts as a foundation for our relationships with Indigenous communities and the responsibility that we all have to truth and reconciliation. Academic research is an area where this relationship can be fostered. Opportunities for the research community to engage with this area of strength are numerous, and the IRST is really one of the key pieces that we're putting in place. The team will work with our researchers and Indigenous communities to identify opportunities where we can walk together on a better path. This small but mighty group will lead our institution as we grow and learn to pursue Indigenous research in a reciprocal and responsible way. On a personal level, I look forward to the journey of learning from the tremendous team that we've assembled. And I'm looking forward to the ways that we can strengthen our relationships and partner on culturally responsive research. To speak about the formation and the vision of the team, I would like to introduce Dr. Rob Thompson, my colleague and friend here in the VPR office. Rob is Associate Vice President Research and Director of Research Services here at the University of Calgary. Rob, over to you.
Thank you, Bill. It is an honor to be here today with all of you for an event that has been many months in the making, and to celebrate a team that has been hard at work since its inception in early 2020. As Bill mentioned, I'd like to speak a little about the motivation behind the creation of the Indigenous Research Support Team, IRST as I call it, IRST as you'll hear many people reference it. I joined the VPR's office in early 2019, and fairly early on in my tenure there, we identified a crucial need for support of our Indigenous researchers here at the University of Calgary, as well as the need to develop mutually beneficial relationships with our Indigenous communities. Apology for the interruption. We define Indigenous research broadly. It includes our Indigenous research community on campus, research conducted in partnership with Indigenous communities, but also research that we carry out on the Treaty 7 lands we are fortunate enough to live on. We deeply value these relationships with Indigenous communities and look to expand them. IRST will also create a space to address and overcome many of the challenges experienced by Indigenous faculty members and within research that is carried out in Indigenous environments. The intention of this team is to strengthen and identify existing resources for Indigenous communities and stakeholders, for university researchers, and for partners to promote collaborative, reciprocal, and culturally responsive research. Above all, through the supportive work of the Indigenous Research Support Team, we want to do research in a good way. This requires dedicated time and resources, as well as consultation with our Indigenous communities. How will we do this? We can begin by building a bridge between the University of Calgary Indigenous strategy and our research plan. By working together with Dr. Michael Hart and university leadership, we outlined the plan for the Indigenous Research Support Team. We were fortunate to receive funding to support IRST through the Federal Research Support Fund's Incremental Project Grants Program. The IRST will thus be the point of contact for all university researchers doing any work within the broader Indigenous landscape, including with Indigenous communities and on Indigenous lands and or waters. IRST will also act as the touch point where Indigenous communities, entities, and organizations can directly inquire and ask information. They will help communities and leadership interface with a broader research network and facilitate meaningful partnerships and opportunities to produce collaborations that reflects the needs and ambitions of our communities. IRST can also assist with providing cultural awareness training and preparation and help resolve any tensions where necessary. Further, this powerful team will provide guidance on ethics, advising, and data management considerations. The IRST is building on a wonderful foundation for tremendous growth on our campus in Indigenous research, and we are honored and excited to see what comes next for this project. With those comments, I would now like to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Michael Hart, Vice Provost of Indigenous Engagement, to speak about the role of research in Itapatope and the value of doing research in a good way. Michael, over to you.
My apologies, an extra button there. Aba was stitch. Okay. Dennistada and dance. Hello, Nawagamagan, take a new totimak. Gakio isquewak, and napilwak. Michael Hart Natisnagasun. Ochekwi CP Niwigan, Niti Manituota. Tapway and Askomoon, no mama weepwin, Agua and Askomoon, Kia wow. I am truly thankful for this time that we get to be together. I'm thankful for all of you joining us in this gathering. I'm Michael Hart. I'm from Fish River Cree Nation and residing here now in Alberta and honored with the task of implementing the Indigenous strategy here at the University of Calgary. I wanted to share a few pieces about this strategy that are guiding us in this work and supporting the launch of the Indigenous Research Support Team. The strategy, Itapatope, has three central concepts of shared space, shared ethical space, transformation, and renewal. It has four visionary circles that include ways of doing, ways of seeing, ways of connecting, and ways of knowing. While all of these circles include aspects tied to what we want to do with the Indigenous Research Support Team and with research throughout the university and with the communities that our colleagues are involved in, I wanted to focus on the first one, that being ways of knowing. This particular focus, ways of knowing, addresses teaching, learning, and research. It's important to recognize that there cannot be peoples without the peoples having a ways of coming to know. As societies, Indigenous peoples have always had their own ways of coming to know. These ways have led to great discoveries in many areas, including astronomy, mathematics, engineering, medicine, anatomy, social relations, personal development, animal health, connection to the land, to the waters. So these areas and many, many more have not been well attended to as of recent through our current structures in Canadian society, indeed in other nations. So while we as peoples have faced difficult times through such things as residential schools, we have worked to maintain the string of connections between nations and through the generations. It's these connections, these relationships that we're able to bring forth our own ways of knowing. Our ways are being recognized today through parallel processes emerging in new areas such as universities. Indigenous approaches to research is at least that, a dynamic spectrum of approaches that stem from the land to life all over the territories, to the skies and heavens. It includes the peoples as individuals, as communities, as nations of these lands, waters, skies, and air. From that which is deep within ourselves to that which connects us. All of these areas are approaches or are matters of attention to Indigenous ways of coming to know. Key to these connections for us is in the Academy is learning to do research in a good way. This means being able to do research that not only respects our ways of doing things that the university has been utilizing over the decades. It includes ways of coming to know that Indigenous peoples practice. It includes things such as ethical space, developing relationships between peoples, and respect for all people involved. The value of doing research in a good way. This has many meanings for our people, many meanings that we're incorporating within the University of Calgary and with our relationships with other academics and other institutions, with other people and other communities. And today it includes informed participation of Indigenous peoples as we go forth with research. It includes concepts like OCAP, ownership, control, access, and possession. Our Indigenous Research Support Team will support people of the universities to work in ways that reflect these concepts, incorporate Indigenous ways of coming to know, and facilitate respectable, honorable relations. It's this team that I'm honored to introduce. I'm honored to introduce the individual leading this team. Amber is a member of the Piikani First Nation. She has joined the University of Calgary 10 months ago as the manager of the Indigenous Research Support Team. She completed her undergrad degree in political science and First Nation studies at Simon Fraser University. Prior to coming to lead this team, she spent 3 years working for the Reciprocal Consulting, an Indigenous research firm in West Vancouver. It was there that she learned the true meaning of honoring Indigenous ways of being in research. So if you would, in your own way, over Zoom, please welcome Amber Bedard. Amber?
Thank you so much for that, Michael. Yes, this is very exciting to kind of launch into the presentation of who we are as the Indigenous Research Support Team. But before we kind of dive deeper into what our program looks like, I would actually like to offer a introduction to our team members. I'll start off. So my name is Amber Bedard, and like Michael had mentioned, I am Blackfoot and a member of Piikani First Nation. My grandparents are Daniel North Pagan and Bessie Bixwan. I mentioned this because community is how I center myself in the work and where my lines of accountability stem from. My background is in Indigenous research and evaluation, working primarily in the public health and social welfare fields. Prior to coming to UCalgary in January, I was at McGill University and fully welcomed the opportunity to come back to my home territories after 10 plus years of being away. I was given the name Beat the Aki, Eagle Woman, by my grandfather, Daniel North Pagan. This name has outlined and affirmed my life's purpose to be a front rider and provider for my family and community, and uplift and inspire others in leadership. So in this way, in the building of the IRST team, we want to honor the work that has existed prior to our commencement and to ensure that ethical, accountable research reflecting Indigenous ways of knowing and being is prioritized. This work is relational, and there are tensions within that. How do we do this work in a way that is relevant and good within those tensions? This is a process, and like my colleague has mentioned before, she named this project an imperfection project. And at minimum, we were trying to negate those tensions, but work within a good way, understanding that this work is ever evolving and ever changing. With that being said, I'd like to introduce my team member, Alexandra Canters, who will share a little bit about herself.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Amber, for that introduction, and thank you, everyone, for being here. So as Amber mentioned, my name is Alexandra Canters. On Amber's team, I'm the Ethics and Process Specialist, the Indigenous Ethics and Process Specialist. So just to give you a little bit of information about myself, I was born and raised in Treaty 7, and I'm a settler on this land with European ancestry. So I was born in Airdrie, just outside of Calgary, but I did have the privilege of doing my schooling in Montreal and Edmonton, so I was away for a while. And since then, I've had the opportunity to work in a lot of different ways, both within the research world and outside, so lots of experience kind of all over the place. I came to the University of Calgary in 2016, and I've been here ever since. Most recently, I transitioned to Amber's team, the Indigenous Research Support Team, from the Research Ethics Office, where I worked as a research ethics analyst. As a settler person, I would say that my journey in this work has really been a journey of transformation. I've lived and operated in colonial institutions for my entire life, and for a really long time, I didn't even know that or know any of the harms associated with that. So on my part, there has certainly been a lot of really deep learning and unlearning and relearning. And that has brought me to this point, and I feel so incredibly privileged and honored to have the opportunity to work alongside Amber and Kimberly, who you'll meet in a minute, on this team. So I really come to this work with a huge amount of humility and gratitude to all of those who have come before us and who continue to work towards making research a better and more inclusive and really an ethical space that prioritizes and celebrates Indigenous voices. And I really do believe that there's just so much more learning and transformation to be done both within and outside of our institution. And really, I just come to this work wanting to do better and to do better in a good way. So thank you.
Thanks, Alex. So as mentioned earlier, my name is Kimberly Van Patten. I am a research coordinator with IRST, and I'm originally from a small rural and northern Alberta community and have been a humble visitor here since 2008. And throughout my journey, I've dabbled in many things, but I always find myself being drawn back to relationship-centered work. And I've had the privilege of being in relationship with amazing Indigenous and racialized youth, both in Calgary and across Western Canada. I've taken part in social justice research and have assisted with several anti-racism projects and groups in the Faculty of Social Work. And in this team, as it's already been mentioned, we follow the footsteps of many Indigenous scholars, researchers, community helpers, wisdom keepers, elders, and allies that have come before us and who are also taking up this work now in ensuring that Indigenous voices and worldviews, experiences, perspectives, knowledges, languages are not only rightfully represented and shared, but celebrated with the world in a good way. And for me, I arrive at this position from a place of humility, respect, and deep sense of responsibility. And I come to this work knowing that research is ceremony. And when it's done correctly, research is medicine, research is self-determination, and research is a form of resistance. And as such, I think I believe, and also my colleagues believe, that this is sacred work. And I'm very honored to be a part of this team.
Thank you so much, Kim, for that. So this next slide is really probably the most intriguing to the audience, an overview and mandate of who we are as the Indigenous Research Support Team. In the short time since IRST has launched, we have been extremely fortunate to have benefited from the knowledge and guidance of many Indigenous advisors, faculty, staff, and students. This is a continuing and ever evolving process. Our mandate is to further the Indigenous research enterprise at the University of Calgary through key offerings and support. We commenced in 2019 in response to the need for better support and more informed resources for researchers engaged in Indigenous collaborations and the identification of several challenges for Indigenous faculty members. We aim to promote collaborative, reciprocal, and culturally responsive research. We are the point of contact for UCalgary researchers doing any work within the broader Indigenous landscape, as well as the point of contact for Indigenous community leadership, facilitating research partnerships and interaction with a broader research network.
So this work is relational. In order to do this work in a good way, our team holds closely the concepts of reciprocity, accountability, respect, transparency, and mutual understanding. We also firmly acknowledge the impact of research and its historic and current impact on communities and individuals.
When it comes to some of our key areas for service and support, we get asked this question a lot about what specifically does the Indigenous Research Support Team do. So we've provided a list here, and just to give a bit more information, the Indigenous Research Support Team really is an advisory entity. We're a resource. We're located in the Research Services Office, so we seek to serve researchers and community. So we're an advisory entity that can provide guidance to researchers and scholars on proper processes to adhere to within Indigenous research. We promote opportunities for culturally responsive, collaborative research where community interests and perspectives are affirmed, and there's a mutual benefit to both parties in all processes. Ideally, we really want to create an interface between community and the University of Calgary, where communities can come to us with specific research needs, and we can introduce them to researchers at the University of Calgary who have the capacity to undertake the request. And similarly, we'd like to see researchers come to us with an idea, and then we can match them with a community that has the capacity and interest in that research topic. We can also provide background information and context so that University of Calgary researchers can enter Indigenous research partnerships in a good way. And the Indigenous Research Support Team can also assist with providing cultural awareness training and preparation, and can also help to resolve any tensions that may arise when navigating those relationships. We're also currently developing a series of program resources and toolkits specifically geared towards academics and researchers and community. And these can be in areas like research contracts, funding negotiations, application processes, the development of research contracts and agreements and engagement protocols, and really any other area that researchers or community may want or need support in. And we can also assist with providing guidance on ethics, advising, and identifying possible funding resources, as well as data management considerations. Really, we want to strengthen and build our capacity to engage with Indigenous partners at the University of Calgary.
Thank you so much, Alex, for that. So this is just a brief overview of our team composition. So again, I am the manager for the Indigenous Research Support Team. My role is primarily to give program oversight and management. I am external facing as well, so I am the point of contact for community, Indigenous community, as well as the horizontal oversight for UCalgary, for the UCalgary research landscape. And then Alex will talk about her position as well as Kim.
Thanks, Amber. Yeah, so as Amber mentioned, I'm the Indigenous Ethics and Process Specialist on the team. And this really involves ethics and research advising for researchers and help with ethics review if necessary. It's a lot of horizontal internal facing. So while Amber is the external facing person, I'm kind of the internal facing within the University of Calgary. And I work really closely with the ethics and compliance team, as well as both ethics boards here at the university. And I often joke that really I have the biggest amount of school spirit for the University of Calgary, even though I've never actually been a student here. This university really has been a huge part of my life since I was extremely young. Like I took sports classes here, I did summer camps, I did everything. So I'm really very invested in this university. And that being said, the university, like many other institutions in Canada, is a colonial institution, and that means that there's a huge amount of work to be done. And in this position, really, I see that work every single day. There's really so much transformation that can be done in our ways of knowing and doing and being as an institution. And that's really what I take as the core of this position on the Indigenous Research Support Team. So I think because I'm so invested in the University of Calgary, I really want us to do better and to be a leader in this area. And I really do think that we can be. To me, ethics really is everything. It's everything. They describe who you are as a person and what you value. And it extends so much further than just the specific actions that you do as a researcher. It's more about who you are when you're doing research and how that connects to and affects everything around you. So I think because of that giant scope of ethics, when people ask me what I do in this position or what services this position provides, my answer is usually, well, what do you need? And then we can figure it out from there together. So ultimately, our team wants to support community-driven, respectful, responsive, and reciprocal research. So it's really an enormous honor and privilege to work with researchers and faculty and staff and students and leadership at the University of Calgary to help make that happen.
So there are two research coordinator positions, one health and one non-health, and I'm in the non-health role. These roles are internal facing, so working closely with Indigenous academics and supporting our Indigenous academics through a variety of research and administrative related activities, and it is a fairly unique position. Indigenous students, faculty members, staff, researchers come to the institution with a deep and inherent sense of communal responsibility and relational accountability to our families, communities, and to the land. And we arrive at the space with the desire to create positive change and seek to honor all of our relatives. And we carry these responsibilities with great strength, courage, and conviction. And speaking from my own experience as a student here at UCalgary, and also both hearing and bearing witness to the experiences of other Indigenous people navigating the tensions that come along with the academy, the space can be heavy on the heart sometimes as much as it can be uplifting. The hours can be long, the nights can be sleepless, and there's always more work to do. So this role was really just designed to reduce the workload burden and barriers that Indigenous faculty may experience and to help contribute to the retention and advancements of Indigenous scholars current as well as upcoming. And because IRST is still within its early phases, and I'm also very new to the role, the roles and responsibilities of the research coordinators in its entirety has yet to be revealed. But our hopes are to connect with Indigenous faculty members to identify areas of support in a collaborative and co-constructive way. By engaging Indigenous faculty members in this process, we intend to develop the research coordinator role to meet the current and emerging needs of Indigenous scholars in ways that are relational, relevant, responsive, and accessible.
Thank you so much for that, Kim and Alex. So this next slide is really geared towards our framework. And, these are concepts that are recurring themes in our work. I wouldn't say that they're a solidified set of a framework, but it's really these recurring themes that have often been told to us in our interactions with researchers and with community. So the IRST team, alongside its partners, we're really building a foundation and positioning ourselves to meet demonstrated needs. So this is now apparent in the inundation of requests we receive on a daily basis and by the feedback on how needed our program is within this landscape. So building the foundation is relational. It takes time and trust, and we are looking to build a foundation that is uniquely ours, uniquely representative of the strengths of our UCalgary community, as well as the surrounding Indigenous communities in Treaty 7. A foundation that plays on the strengths of our community here at UCalgary and within the Indigenous landscape is really important when we're designing this framework. So IRST envisions that all relationships between UCalgary and the Indigenous community and its further partners are based on those fundamental principles as described here, but that we can move forward together in a good way so that we can strengthen the transformational and innovative research that is happening right now and occurring, feeding into our larger research mandate. So that really concludes our presentation. We wanted to keep this as brief as possible, but there will be about a 30-minute window where we can answer any questions that the audience may have. Thank you so much. All right, next on the agenda, we have Cora Voyager, who will be, Dr. Cora Voyager will be giving her a brief presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cora Voyager. I'm a sociology professor here at the University of Calgary. And I'm going to speak with you a little bit about my experiences as an Indigenous researcher and as a professor at the University of Calgary. Can I get you to advance the slide, please? Okay, so this is me. I'm a member of the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation from Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. My spirit name is Sipia Matapo, which means her journey begins at night. I'm a sociologist. I trained at the University of Alberta, and I was the first First Nation person and the first Indigenous woman to get a PhD at the University of Alberta in 1997. And I started teaching here at the University of Calgary the following year. And I am the highest ranking and longest serving Indigenous professor at the University of Calgary. And for a number of years, I was essentially the only Indigenous professor that had a full-time permanent position here at the university. I'm a researcher and an award-winning university teacher. I'm an author. I have published 8 books. I've got another book out for review right now. I'm also have a private research company, Cora Voyager Social Research, that I have run for the past 25 years. And I do private contracts with a number of different First Nations, with government, both provincial and federal. I have worked with Statistics Canada. So I have a lot of research experience. And actually, I started doing research prior to coming to the university. And I'm also a residential school survivor. Next, please. So this is my little town, Fort Chip. As you can see, we're very close to the Northwest Territories border, about 50 miles from the Northwest Territories border, the 60th parallel. It's a fly-in community, about a 1-hour plane ride north of Fort McMurray. And our community is the largest European, the oldest European settlement in Alberta. It was established in 1788 by the Northwest Company. However, our people have been in this area. The historical record goes back at least 13,000 years. It's been said that we have been in this region for about 500 generations. So I'm from the Treaty 8 region. We know that one of the economic engines of our country, the oil sands, is on our traditional territory. And we have a love-hate relationship with resource development. My great-grandfather, Alexandre Laviolette, signed treaty for us in 1899, and my family was in hereditary chieftainship for the next 85 years in my community. And we had our first elected chief in the mid-1980s. Next, please. So, speaking about some of my observations about research in the Indigenous community and just research in general. So we know that with social research, what we talk about is unique or emerging trends within the world. What has happened with Indigenous people is that our community, my community, was seen as almost a community of convenience for researchers that would come in to our community for either research funding or looking for a project to work on. We know that within the Indigenous community that there have been some bad research projects going on. We know about the Havasupai, for example, in the United States, who had blood taken from them. And for the next 50 years, this blood sample was used for a number of different projects. Issues around forced sterilization within our community, and also the misappropriation of knowledge. We know of the Sabo situation with the Gaina in the south, where someone came into the community, gathered information from the elders, and then placed a copyright on it. So in some cases, we have the Indigenous community who say that they're fed up with university researchers because until recently, it was pretty much a one-way relationship, that the non-Indigenous researchers would come into the community, gather information, and then leave and never to be seen again. And one thing that I tell people with my work is that the Indigenous community does not have to work with us as university researchers. So we have to keep that in mind when we go to the Indigenous community, that they don't have to work with us. And we know that research ethics, I'm not sure what's going on with this cursor here, but it's bobbing all over my screen. Okay, and and research ethics can be an issue, because we know that although the university has its ethics, its code of ethics, and that we must, as university researchers, complete ethics to get an ethics certificate, an application that we must get approval for, that sometimes this is not enough, because there are people that come into our community that are quite unethical. And so it's more than just the university or tri-council ethics. I mean, we have to have our own personal code of ethics. Next, please. So some of my observations, what I have been asked to do throughout my career is mostly applied research. We do have pure research, which is dealing with, esoteric issues or theory issues, but primarily we are asked to come into the community to deal with a specific thing and try to find recommendations or answers to a specific topic. So again, there's a need for various types of research within the community, both qualitative and quantitative, but also mixed method, which is what I usually do. And was mentioned earlier, it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships and having the people know you and trust you. And you're placed in a very honored position when people tell you their, stories and give you information that can sometimes be seen as harsh, as hurtful. People will tell you what has happened to them in the past. I know that there has been quite a lot of research done recently about residential schools and how this places people in a very vulnerable position. So we have to honor that. We have to make people feel safe and to let them know that we are working from a good place. So again, dealing with the issue of trust, and the trust goes both ways, and also having the community buy into a project. So in many cases, as I mentioned, the applied research, people ask us to come into the community. And what I have said throughout my career is that we have to move the lens. And as academics, and scholars, we are probably guilty of looking at pathologies within the Indigenous community, looking at the Indigenous community as some type of a deficit model, and not looking at the resilience within the community, not looking at the robust and vitality within the community, looking at what's going on that's good within the community. I mean, for example, when H1N1 was rearing its ugly head in Canada, there was information that went out to the community, and the Indigenous community was one of the communities that was the most efficient in getting information out to its members, only because through different ceremonies that we have, I mean, it's you know, for us to feed 1,000 people is something that is done quite often. And so to look at the organization within the Indigenous community, because from an academic perspective, we are very often seen as being disorganized, and that is not true. So as an Indigenous researcher, this isn't an easy in the community. We are held to a very, very high standard. And because we are a member of the community, we don't have an exit strategy. So it's not anything that we can do to go into a community to gather information and just simply leave. Because we are part of the community, we're someone's daughter, we're someone's granddaughter, we're someone's niece. So we don't want to be that person that doesn't respect the community and doesn't you know, do what we say we're going to do. So again, coming back to the issue of individual integrity and responsibility. And also, we know that we have a number of people that are, as Indigenous researchers, that are willing to partner with us for whatever reason. So, you know, my advice to Indigenous researchers is, you know, ask questions about people wanting to partner with you, because sometimes, you know, the idea is that, you know, you're going to get an Indigenous person on board just so you can, you know, apply to Indigenous funds or, you know, that kind of thing. And you know, chasing the money isn't always the best way to get you know, a research profile. Next, please. So ethics, again, active discourse within the Indigenous community. Most people are going to come to an office like IRST to ask for people to work with them. In fact, this reminds me of a model that I worked with in the early 1990s. When I was a graduate student, I worked with a group called IMAP, which was Indian Management Assistance Program that was run out of Indian Affairs, and I worked with them for 5 summers when I was a graduate student. So again, individual communities have started to implement their own research protocols. It's not just a matter of going into the community anymore and, you know, you deciding as a researcher that you're going to work with them. The community is now asking a lot of questions and deciding whether they want to work with you or not. So again, with Tri-Council, there are guidelines against or safeguards against abuse, misappropriation of traditional knowledge, and the individual's rights to privacy. So as I mentioned earlier, ethics from the institution are sometimes not enough, and that there must be ramifications for people who breach both the professional and personal ethics. And I have personally run into situations where I have tried to bring to people's attention about unethical behavior of some of the people that I have worked with, and it has fallen on deaf ears. So I'm hoping that this is something that can be addressed with this office. And Michael earlier talked about OCAP, talking about the Indigenous community owning, controlling, accessing, and being in partnerships and having possession of their own data. Next, please. So ethical considerations, we know, do no harm. Consider who initiated the research and for what reasons. Ask those questions. They may be hard questions, but it's easier to get those answers at the beginning than it is to have people come into your community and then you have to answer to the community and you know, give answers to why you as a researcher brought those people into the community. What is the aim of the research? Make sure that there is appropriate methodologies. We know that there has been a body of work lately talking about Indigenous methodologies and what is appropriate. Also dealing with the funders, what is their intention? Just because there's money out there doesn't mean that you have to apply for it. We want to make sure that when we disseminate results, that it's going to be in a format that is useful to the community. I worked on a health project with Indigenous women. And one of the things that we did was we developed a pamphlet. This was for members in the community. This is, we could leave it at various offices. However, when you go to an academic conference and you're telling people that you used a pamphlet, they're kind of, rolling their eyes back like, we're in the dark ages and, we could be a lot more technologically advanced. However, we are serving the community. We are not serving the academic community. We are serving the Indigenous community and doing it on in a way that is useful to them. So again, informed consent, people knowing that they can withdraw from research, that they have confidentiality, and also knowing whether we are placing people at risk. We know that with, for example, a residential school, that there was a lot of emotional risk for people, psychological risk. What type of risk is it? What level of risk? And what mitigations do we have in place to minimize that impact? Next, please. So here's a sample of some of my research projects over the years. Quite a long list, dealing, for example, at the beginning with economic leakage studies. This was studies of the amount of Indigenous money that was leaving the reserve and going into the small communities around the reserves. We know that the individuals, reserve members, were experiencing quite a lot of racism from the store owners as well as other people within the community. And with this information, we were able to go to the Chamber of Commerce and say, we are spending X millions of dollars in your community every month. We want to be treated a little bit better. Another research project I did was a community census for a group of people who were quite unique around the Grand Cache area, wanting to know how many members they had and the conditions that they lived in, so they could negotiate with the provincial government. So I have done a lot of research with Indigenous women, dealing with issues around entrepreneurship. Some of the findings from that were quite interesting because of the 49 Indigenous women that I interviewed in Alberta, I found that all of the individuals were self-funded, which meant that they had no government funding for their businesses. All but one started their business from scratch. And the women earned between $50,000 a year, and the woman who had the highest grossing business the year before made $3 million. Indigenous employment. It was quite interesting because I was invited to an Indigenous conference dealing with employment that was put together by non-Indigenous people. And when I told them what I found, that Indigenous people were less likely to be advanced in their careers, that they made less money, that they were underemployed, and that even though people had the employment experience and education. They were usually hired at lower levels, dealing with issues of trust. So anyway, I went to that conference and I was never asked back again. So anyway, it's not easy being an Indigenous researcher. There's a lot of pressures placed on you from within the community, but also in the academic world as well. And I'll finish now. And one of the things that I'll say is that as an Indigenous person within the research world, but also within the academy, culturally, for us to toot our own horn and to tell everybody what we do is something that goes against our culture. What we are expected to do is to stand coyly by and have somebody else talk about what we do, tell others what we do, but for us to do it for ourselves is something that is against our culture. However, in the academy, if you don't do this, you will essentially lose out, because it's a competitive environment. We compete for research funds, we compete for graduate students, and other perks that we get. So anyway, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Cora. We certainly are in awe of the work that has been done and that you've been engaged in over the last few decades at the University of Calgary. And we really acknowledge that work that you have been engaged in has really paved the path for us to be here and engaged in this work. So thank you so much. So next on the docket, we have Christina Kopp to do a presentation. Just in recognition of the work that Christina does, Christina is a Cree Métis woman from Edmonton, Alberta. Her family descends from Buffalo Lake Métis settlement and the communities of Andrew and Whitford. Christina is a graduate of the Master of Social Work program at the University of Calgary. Under the guidance of Dr. Leona Makokis and Dr. Ralph Bedore, Christina has co-led many research projects related to that. So next, welcome Christina.
Miasin, hi Amber. So tanse notagweo asini witsio esqueo nitsigasan, pasqua mustu sagaiganek otsenia, maga megwats Andrew Newigan, Muriel Stanley Van Nokum, Egwa Harold Kopp Nimusam, Maga Elsie Little Childs, Nichapan Kikino Otse. So hello everyone, my English name is Christina and my ceremony Nehio name translates to Grandmother Mountain Woman. And as Amber shared, I was born in Edmonton, Alberta. My family is from Buffalo Lake Métis settlement. And so that is located about 2 hours north of Edmonton and approximately a half an hour north of a small community, Smoky Lake in northern Alberta. And I currently live in Andrew, and that's where I'm situated today. And that's really cool for me to share that because the communities of Andrew and Whitford are named after one of my ancestors, a Métis man, who received this land through the scrip process when Louis Riel was fighting and advocating for our nationhood and for our people. And that actually started this day in 1869. So Kayas, a long time ago, our people were advocating for our Métis rights. And now here I am living and owning land in the community that my ancestors once walked on. It's the land that they attended to, that they harvested, that they cultivated, and it's where they spoke our language, where they spoke Nihio Wewian. And so I'm incredibly honored to share that with you. And if anyone were to ask me about land reclamation, that is my story and my definition. And so my mentors, as Amber shared, are Dr. Ralph Bedore and Dr. Leona Makokis. Leona is a Cree elder. We don't really use that term in our work and in our research. Instead, we've come to refer to Leona as our Notsukoisu, our old lady. And that's a Cree teaching around someone who has filled her home with so much love and with so much experiences that she sits outside the doorway of the teepee of her lodge to protect all that she has created. And that truly is the role Leona has played on our research or our wisdom seeking team. And so through Leona, we get so much of our guidance for our research projects. And we have many ceremonial conversations with Leona where we get to discuss teachings and what they mean to us and how we want to pursue them in the context of our work and in the context of research. And so Leona is the former president of Blue Quills University in St. Paul. She is a survivor of Blue Quills Indian Residential School, and she now calls Kihiwan home and is originally a band member of Saddle Lake. And with Dr. Ralph Boder, Leona and him co-lead a team of Indigenous and non-Indigenous researchers or wisdom seekers. And so I'm one of many co-leads for numerous projects that our team gets funding for and does wisdom seeking work on. And what we've learned is that it's really important to have both an Indigenous elder as a lead, as well as a non-Indigenous person or academic. And we don't really refer to Dr. Ralph Boder as someone who's non-Indigenous or as a white man. To us, he's a Witsitaso, a helper in the context of ceremony. And that's because of his years of history working directly in the Nehio Cree community, participating in ceremony and learning the language. And from his work, specifically coordinating the first MSW program at the University of Blue Quills through the University of Calgary, he was gifted the name Oskapios, and that means an elder's helper, a ceremonial helper. And that's given Ralph the ability to practice ceremony, to be an Oskapios in pipe ceremony with Leona. And so having them as co-leads is really influential to our team's work and to the influence we have in both the Western worlds and in the Indigenous worlds. And so we've learned through Leona and Ralph that people are heard differently. And so as a Métis woman, when I present, I'm heard differently. Leona, as a Nehio Esqueo, as a Cree woman or a Notsukoisu, she is also heard differently. And same with Ralph. And so there's times when we do our work that often Ralph is asked to speak up or to bring those of a more Western mindset to coming to understand our work. And so that is how I was asked to present today through just sitting with Ralph and Leona. They shared that we can practice humility by having me as an emerging researcher and as someone who has had the pleasure of working closely with Ralph and Leona. I can talk to our team's work in a really humble context. And as well, Leona is in the north in the bush, and Zoom just doesn't work for her as a Notsukoisu. And for Ralph, this is his hunting season, so he's away in the bush as well. So I've been given the opportunity, and I'm so, again, honored and humbled to be here among so many established researchers and scholars, and especially Cora. My Kuko Muriel founded the Institute for the Advancement of Aboriginal Women and the Esqueo Awards, and Cora was one of the women we have honored through the Circle of Honor Award. So again, that's truly humbling for me. And so I've just been asked today to share a little bit about some of our research projects and how we come to understand Indigenous research or define Indigenous research. And we really have moved away from using the term research or research methodology. And instead, we refer to our work as Indigenous wisdom seeking. And this all resulted from a SSHRC-funded project and a project funded by the Urban Aboriginal Knowledge Network, UAKN, that came out of just a ceremonial conversation that Ralph and Leona were having. And so a while back, they were asked to teach a graduate level research course specifically on Indigenous research methodologies. And when they looked back at the literature, they found that often Indigenous research was subsumed under qualitative research and was more an extension of a qualitative methodology. And that really didn't sit well with Leona or Ralph. And they wanted to understand how, or what is an Indigenous research methodology and what does that mean? And so they asked a two-part question, a two-part research question. And their question was, what is truth? And how do we know when something is true in an Indigenous worldview? And so we spent a number of years researching and understanding truth from the Cree worldview, the Nehiyaw worldview. And I was fortunate enough to join that project when I started my BSW in the Edmonton campus in the central and northern Alberta region of the Faculty of Social Work, University of Calgary. And then when I began my MSW at the University of Calgary and now the main campus down south in Calgary, I had got to continue on working really closely and immersed in that project. And one of the most transformative moments for me was when I realized that we do all of our work in ceremony, and we practice ethics in ceremony, and we honor the ethics of relationship and the ethics of spirit. And so in all of our projects, we understand ethics as protocol. And so we don't have consent forms. If an elder consents to sharing with us, they do that through accepting our offering, through accepting our tobacco or broadcloth that Amber presented at the beginning of this launch event. And then we move into having a pipe ceremony, typically for our wisdom seeking journey. And we refer to our journey as wisdom seeking because when we do our pipe ceremony, we're really asking the ancestors for permission to wisdom seek. And we understand that in the Indigenous worldview, no knowledge is owned. And when we hear our old men and our old ladies talk about the lodges they hold, or the language they have, or the teachings that they're able to share, they always acknowledge who their teachers were. And so they'll talk about their kukum, their musum, their chapans, their great-great-grandparents who continue to protect this knowledge and share this knowledge and pass it down even when it was difficult. And that has led us to understand that the ancestors carry all the knowledge and they hold all the knowledge. And so when we wisdom seek and when we do pipe and when we offer protocol, we're specifically asking for the ancestors to be a part of our journey and to guide all aspects of our wisdom seeking. And through the Truth Project, what was really neat is that we learned that how we communicate with the ancestors is through song. And so Leo McGilvery, Nehiyaw Cree elder in Saddle Lake, an amazing singer, actually gifted our team with a research song, with a wisdom seeking song. And it translates in Cree to "Come Help Us Spirit." Piwitsi Henan Okisigo. And so it's how we bring the ancestors directly into our work. And it's also how we honor some other teachings we received from Elder Reg Croshoe, who shared with us that when you're doing Indigenous wisdom seeking, you have to be real in the community and you have to be real to the elders that you're doing research with. And so if you don't do ceremony, you're not real to them. And so all of our work begins in ceremony, often begins with a pipe. And then if we're ever stuck or are not sure where to go or where this project is taking us, we gather with smudge and we sit in circle and we talk, or we gather in sweat and we process. And so we've really learned that Indigenous wisdom seeking is all process based. And it's about coming together in circle, practicing ceremony, and using the language. The language is key to understanding certain concepts or parallels. And that's a huge aspect of the transformation we experience and the understanding and experiential learning we gain when we're doing Indigenous wisdom seeking. And so for us, because ceremony and language is so integral to all aspects of our wisdom seeking, we've learned that all wisdom seeking begins in the community and stays in the community and happens in the community. And so we always begin in community searching for the knowledge that we're looking for, just based on a ceremonial conversation or idea we had. And for me, one of the key things to understanding Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous ways of knowing is going back to the language and learning the language and understanding that when I speak Cree, I'm speaking the language of my ancestors and they can hear me. And it's key because there's some really fundamental differences between Cree and Indigenous languages compared to English. And so the Cree language is based on verbs and relationships. And when you look at a term and break it down in the language, it talks about the connection between two items or two things or two relationships. And so an example of that is through our kinship terms. So my mom would be my negawi, and my auntie, which is a noun, not a verb, would be negawis. But in Cree, that term negawi stems from negawi, and that ending sis just makes that word smaller. And so in our worldview, our aunties are our little mothers. Our negawis are our little mothers, and they perform the same role in our lives, the same loving and nurturing role that our mothers would perform. And so that's really key. The other huge influence with the language is that spirit is built into it. And so terms are constructed based on being animate or inanimate. And an example of that is the term for child or for children. And so the root term is awa, and then the ending is sis. And again, sis makes that small, and awa means animate, it means spirit. And so when you bring those terms together, you hear awa sis, and that means a child in Cree, but it really is a small spirit on a human journey. And the other fundamental difference is that in Nehio, in the Cree language, we have no gender. We don't have masculine or feminine terms. And so, again, it creates fundamental differences between how you understand your role in the community, and the terms for gender are more connected to the teaching. So for example, that term esqueo for being a woman connects to the term esquateo fire, and esquatim, which is the doorway into the woman's teepee or to the woman's lodge. And so all those terms bring together really empowering, ceremonial-based roles that women hold in our communities. And so we've learned that you can't do wisdom seeking without going back to the language and integrating the language into all aspects of our work, into what we're searching for. And so I mentioned some of our wisdom seeking projects, and that was particularly the Truth Project. And I want to go back to that. So what we learned through that project is that, sorry, my internet just said it was unstable. I hope you can all still hear me. But what we learned through that project is that truth is a verb in Cree. The term tapwewian is taught by our turtle in the 7 teachings, the Miskinak, and it means to be on a journey, miskanau. And so those two terms, Miskinak and miskanau, connect. And so when you're searching for truth in an Indigenous worldview, it's a journey, and it's an ever-changing journey. And where you're at will change based on your level of understanding, your level of participation in ceremony, your level of learning the language, and so forth. But we learned that we're often trying to seek truth as a noun in our research, but when we're wisdom seeking, we're seeking truth as a verb. And it's something that's constantly evolving and constantly changing. And that for me and many of our research team has been where the transformation lies, because we've come to a place where we can now live our truth and seek our truth and celebrate who we are as Indigenous people. And so again, I'm just one of many co-members and co-leads of our team, but we've all had the chance to make connections to our ancestors, to our language, to the land and communities we come from through our university education. And because we're doing wisdom seeking, our university education has been completely transformative. And for me and another one of our team, we actually found out through archives and doing our own personal, I guess, research or investigation into our ancestry that one of her Cree grandmothers married into my family. And we decided we're, of course, cousins. And so, so it's changed our relationships. We have relationships that are based in ceremony, and we're accountable to one another entirely through through the practice of ceremony and the relationships that ceremony create. And when we were, I guess, writing the a chapter for the Truth Project that's in one of our books that was recently published, it's through Fernwood Publishing and it's called Opikinawasoin. We were really struggling to explain the importance of ceremony to our community. And for me, it's so hard to explain because we just do ceremony. Ceremony just happens. And in our language, ceremony is sitsugewin, really just translates to how we come together, how we arrange, and how things are done. And so I would talk a lot about ceremony, the transformation I experience in ceremony, the role of ceremony in healing, and that healing only occurs and happens in ceremony. But I still couldn't describe really what ceremony meant to those who had never participated in ceremony. And it came to me through a conversation with Ralph and Leona, because I was discussing that ceremony is the heart of our communities. And then we got to this place of realizing that ceremony is like our heartbeat. You don't know what's happening. You don't have to regulate your blood pumping through your veins. You don't have to regulate your breathing. Your heart just does that. And that's what ceremony does. It just regulates our people. And I work full-time with Indigenous youth. And one of my youth shared with me that in ceremony, there is no pain. Everything is okay in ceremony. And that's truly what ceremony is. It's just the heartbeat of who we are and how we gather and seek knowledge and how we get to experience all the knowledge coming together. And in ceremony, it's where our language is heard, our protocols are lived and practiced, and you constantly learn more as you go to ceremony and see how things happen and how our elders and our helpers work together to make ceremony happen through all the lodge building and protocol. And so with our projects, as Cora mentioned, we like to make sure that our work is relevant and accessible to the community. And so oftentimes we parallel our work with the Western research article, academic publication, to some sort of resource that is helpful. One of our resources is Awina Kianau. It's available at Blue Quills, and it has so many different stages of life, stages of development, all the 7 sacred teachings, the Turtle Lodge teachings, and it's designed as a coloring book for parents to share with their children or for foster parents to share with Indigenous kids that they have in their care. And that resource is paralleled with an article published through First Peoples Child and Family Review that talks about the brain science of attachment theory and defines Cree attachment theory in a more Western academic sense. And so when we do all of our work, we like to make sure that we are creating resources that the community can use. For our book that was recently published through Fernwood, our chapter on understanding Indigenous truth, which I think is chapter 1 or 2, has QR codes. And this came from Elder Reg Croshoe. And so you can read our chapter and hear or read our team member's voice talking about what this has meant in the context of wisdom seeking and ceremony in regards to a certain teaching you were gifted. And then we actually have a QR code that you can scan with your phone to have that teaching directly from an elder. And so that's that parallel process again, and making sure that this knowledge is accessible and that the teachings are honored in all of our work. And so we live the teachings. To know is to do in our worldview, and there's no severance between knowing and doing. When you have a teaching, you live that teaching and you carry that teaching forward. And so I'm going to conclude my brief presentation today with something that I was really excited about that our team created. And it came out of researching and understanding what is an Indigenous identity. And so our team created a document that human service workers or social workers working with Indigenous children can use to understand their rights. And this came from the understanding that we often hear there is an overrepresentation of Indigenous children in care. There's an overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the justice system. There's an overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the law system and so forth. And what we've learned is that that statement uses English to imply blame and to create shame. And in our team, whenever we hear that statement, we tend to stand up, raise our hand, and say, excuse me, but I'd just like to share that actually there is an overrepresentation of Western worldviews, beliefs, and values in the lives of Indigenous people. And so I'll conclude with the Declaration of Rights for every Nehio child. Every Nehio child has the full and absolute right to experience love on their human journey and to have their gifts honored, to know and to live all of the spiritual teachings, to know and to live and to participate in ceremony, to learn and to live in the Nehio language, to relationships and connections with family, the community, and the ancestors based in the Nehio teachings, to know their spiritual clan and learn their teachings, to laughter and Nehio humor, to have access to Nehio medicine, healing processes, and wellness teachings, to be strongly connected to many Notsakwesua and Wakisenuak, to gather, to hunt, and to feast according to the teachings, to learn the songs and the ceremonies, to become Waskapios and Waogichikawisquewiak, to learn and to live the Nehia parenting and caregiving teachings and practices, to the freedom to choose, to live by either Western or Indigenous worldviews, values, and beliefs, or both, to have economic opportunities for themselves and access to economic development in their communities, to being a living part of their Nehio community, to live Neopimatsuan, the good life, and a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual balance. And every individual agency, program, caregiver, etc., has the absolute responsibility to ensure that all of these rights are protected without exception. Hai Examaga.
Thank you so much for that, Christina. I really love that line that you said, ceremony is the heartbeat of our communities. I really feel like that's such a strong statement that further outlines our own intentions as we enter into this work. Next on this time that we have together, we have a Q&A period. And so we've already kind of been getting an influx of questions already. So please feel free if you have questions to type them into the Q&A box. But starting off this period, I think the first question that is actually geared towards Christina. So this attendee asked, I am curious about sharks research that Leona and Ralph did. Where can we get access to the findings of this research and the Truth Project? Christina, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, for sure. So that project is now published with many of our other projects in a book that has been edited by Leona, Dr. Ralph Boder, Avery Calhoun, and Stephanie Tyler. And it's available on Fernwood's website, and it's titled O Pikanawasoin, Growing a Child.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Christina, for that. I think there are also a few other questions for you that we will pose. One participant asked, I'm wondering if Christina can talk about how the team is able to navigate Western ethic review boards and funder expectations.
For sure. So when we talk about members of our team being heard differently, it's often Ralph or our research assistants who I guess are more stronger academically and with writing that really work with ethics committee to bring awareness and knowledge to the importance of protocol and to the importance of protocol being how we get consent. And so I'm really looking forward actually to the Indigenous Research Support Team, because I know they've supported one of our projects that's coming up around ceremony and healing that were actively wisdom seeking. And so we were able to have a conversation with, or our team members, I wasn't part of this conversation, we were able to have a conversation with them about how we understand protocol as ethics. And so really it takes time, it takes conversation, it takes advocating. And at some point, we have such an open group of elders that guide our work that they're willing to bring others into ceremony to experience what that means. And a good resource for really understanding the ethics of spirit is the Blue Quill's research ethics policy. There's a lot of information there about the role of being an escapios or a helper when you do wisdom seeking or research.
Great, thank you so much, Christina. Next, we have a question asked by Sherry Noreen, and it's, how will IRST work to build trust within Indigenous communities for research to continue? And yeah, thank you so much, Sherry, for this question. This is really important. You know, building trust and that relational work is a hard thing to really navigate. I think it's really important to acknowledge the history that research has had and the legacy that research has had in our communities, and the negative interactions that we've had, you know, Indigenous people within the institution and externally through government channels. We've been studied and not in a good way. It's been often one-sided, this conversation. So within this framework, you know, we understand these tensions, and I think the biggest asset that we have and what is the strength of our program is that we are an Indigenous-led program, and that at the heartbeat of who we are is an accountability that stems towards relationships and community. So but within the institution itself, we have a variety of mechanisms that we're working with to really develop protocols and guidelines that are affirmed by community and Indigenous leadership. We have our circle of advisors that are geared towards giving us input in this way, as well as working with key elders to develop these protocols and guidelines. So I hope that answers your question. The next question that we have is by Holly, and we'll be answering this live. Alex, do you want to take this question by Holly Jones?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Holly, for the question. So the question is the team collecting research data or evaluating research processes while offering support? What kinds of learning outcomes, internal and external, are you all hoping for? This is a great question, and yes, as is expected for all pilot phases of projects, we are indeed doing evaluation and collecting information. Not a huge amount, but we do definitely keep records of researchers that we've advised with, groups that we've met with, relationships that we've formed, for sure. Amber, also, maybe did you want to add a little bit to this too, just with your evaluation brain?
Yes, absolutely. So I think, you know, perhaps we need to have a little bit more clarity on this question, but I think it is a really valid question in terms of how our team is collecting research data and evaluating research. So again, we want to really affirm that you know, we're not doing the research ourselves. We're here to support researchers engaged in this area, and so we're really here to provide the tools and resources to researchers as they embark on their research journey. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you. So next on the list, we have the question, Considering the importance of long-term relationships in any Indigenous research project, how will IRST work to continue to support partnerships? How long is the pilot confirmed to operate for? And this is a really great question. The pilot is a 3-year term, and so we are currently kind of concluding the first year of the pilot phase right now. Of course, the overall intention of our program is really to become a permanent feature of research services. So we are located in research services. Again, it's that striving to create a more permanent feature. And so the second part of this question is, how will IRST work to continue to support partnerships? And again, great question. There's a variety of ways that we can work within this framework. One is really providing researchers with the tools and resources needed to engage, as well as provide, tension solving services. So if there is any area along the way where you need clarity, IRST can definitely step in to help navigate some of those tensions and offer insight and clarity into research partnerships. And again, looking at that long-term relationship piece, the nature of Indigenous research projects are long-term. There's engagement and relationship building starts long before a research contract is even written up and pursued. Really that effort starts long before in that relationship building phase. And we really want to emphasize the importance of that pre-work before engaging in the official steps to do research collaborations. Again, research doesn't stop after the project. It actually is a longer term process, and we really want to encourage and ensure that there is that thought when engaging in research, that not only is a commitment for a certain amount while the research project is happening, but that it's actually a longer term engagement. And if people don't have the capacity to undertake that long-term commitment, we really want to ensure, just be reflective and saying, like, should we be engaging in this research if we don't have that capacity to fulfill that obligation? All right. Is there, please feel free to continue with the questions. There's a few here that we can answer, but of course, please feel free to continue answering any questions. And if there's no more, then we can certainly end early. So this next question that we can answer is, could you please highlight funding sources available for Indigenous research? And an amazing question, something that we can definitely help facilitate. This is actually something that I would ask whoever submitted this question to connect with us individually, looking at your unique research needs and ambitions. It's definitely a more personal question. So definitely connect with us. Our main email, we'll of course put it at the bottom, but our main email is the IRST@UCalgary.ca. So the next question that we have is, how do we know what research priorities exist for Indigenous peoples? Can you share if there is a list? Again, referring back to some of what was mentioned in our presentation with Dr. Cora Varger and Christina Kopp, there is a variety of resources available within this. So, looking at OCAP as a formidable, tenure to the research itself. I think this, to be honest, it's really hard to answer this question because it really is so contextual on the unique community that you are hoping to engage with. Every community or Indigenous organization partnership has their own unique set of priorities and ambitions, and it's really contextual in that way. So if there is a specific project that you're thinking about in this question, definitely connect to us. It's a little bit easier to answer as we know the context of the question being asked. Again, IRST@ucalgary.ca. So this next question is asking, could you outline some of the specific supports available to U of C Indigenous faculty? So grant writing, ethics support, etc. We are really fortunate within our team to have a unique position led by Kimberly, who is the research coordinator. So her role is really to support Indigenous faculty members at the University of Calgary, outlining all of that, so the grant writing, ethics support, etc. Kim, do you want to take a moment to add to this question?
Sure. Yeah, I think as you mentioned already, grant writing, helping out with like legal contracts, agreements, negotiations. I think also I can be a support in terms of any sort of conflict resolution, or to perhaps like in advocating for things. I'm really just open to really just morphing and forming this role in whatever way makes the most sense and meets the needs of our Indigenous faculty. Which, I mean, I just started this role a couple months ago. This is month 2. So I've been reaching out to Indigenous faculty for just one-on-one check-ins and just for introductions and to meet and to connect. So I'm looking to do more of that and to get more of an idea of what might be helpful. And then in the future, looking at maybe organizing some ways for us all to kind of get together and discuss what this role could look like, because it's really a very unique role. From some of the research that I've done, there isn't really anything like it. So I think there's a lot of room for growth and opportunity in this role, and I'm open to hearing any ideas.
And just to continue on that, you know, there are 2 positions dedicated on our team to supporting Indigenous faculty members. So Kim primarily is responsible for the non-health faculties, faculty support, and we are currently in the process of hiring for the health research coordinator position. So working to support Indigenous faculty members in health, in the health areas. So again, it's uniquely positioned to the different research endeavors. We're really excited to see who comes on board to fulfill that role. So this, just continuing on, you know, there was that question earlier about the importance of long-term relationships in any Indigenous research project, and how will IRST work to continue to support these partnerships. I also want to kind of direct this question to the executive leadership, if they have any insight to really address and answer that.
I just want to see if Rob wants to go first, because of Rob has been one of the co-leads, along with Florentine Strepnik, in the EDI dimension strategy and in a lot of the behind the scenes work for establishing the IRST. Rob, are you there?
You can start and I'll pick up and fill in any gaps.
Okay, and I just want to make sure I capture, so I'm looking at the questions in the chat. So Amber, I just want to be sure that I'm picking up the right part of the question that's just been posed. So Amber, can you just orient Rob and I to the Was it the most, yeah, go ahead, just again, so we're not speaking to the wrong part of the question. So.
Absolutely. So this question is, considering the importance of long-term relationships in any Indigenous research project, how will IRST work to continue to support partnerships? How long is the pilot confirmed to operate for?
Yeah. So I think earlier on, Amber, you gave an appropriate answer. So we benefit. So I should mention that that funding for the IRST comes from an envelope of funding that we receive from the federal government, which is called the IPG funding. And IPG is incremental project grants, and this is an envelope of funding that the University of Calgary receives, and the size of the envelope is linked to our tri-council funding successes, and so we get an allocation. And this year it was the full allocation under IPG was over $2 million, and some of the funding goes to the new knowledge engagement team in research services. Some goes to Innovate Calgary and some of the entrepreneurship initiatives that we have, and then the funding for our IRST. And as you've said, it's a three-year pilot, quote unquote. Certainly, we have a long-term commitment through the university, through the university's Indigenous engagement strategy at Tapatope, and we want to work with communities and certainly maintain this for some time. I think there's a piece of that question there that I would actually defer to you, Amber, to speak about what the partnership strategies are and how those will be sustained. But we really, at the executive level and certainly within the vice president research team, we're very committed to advancing Indigenous research and the partnerships for such. So that's how I would respond. Rob, do you want to pick up on that? And Amber, you could speak to the partnerships piece.
I'll pick up a little bit and then turn it back over to Amber. When we were envisioning IRST and envisioning this partnerships question, what our dream is, or at least my dream, is to move from a project-based relationship where individual researchers just keep popping up at these communities saying we want to do research here, to more of a community institutional relationship, with Amber being at the forefront of that. So we would have ongoing relationships with all of these communities, and that our researchers would be interacting with Amber and her team, and she would be identifying the good matches and then bringing those into the relationship, doing the introductions into the relationship with the communities. But when a project completes, that doesn't end the relationship. We continue on an ongoing basis, and new projects, new researchers come up, and it's a two-directional street that our researchers are bringing forward their desires, but also with Amber's relationship, she's then able to identify those priorities, referencing the earlier question, that the individual communities have, and bring them back to the university and see if we can find researchers that can assist. So I think this is where the question was sort of leading, but the whole point here is to have an ongoing relationship, not a stop-start relationship. Amber, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So like mentioned in our presentation, really we view this project as ever evolving, you being uniquely adapted to the needs and ambitions that are desired by community. And of course, this is very contextual. So, I definitely don't want to answer or assume in a pan-Indigenous way, but it's really about honoring the individual and unique needs that are made as we engage in research partnerships. And, again, Treaty 7 will look very different from Treaty 1, et cetera, to unceded territories in Vancouver, et cetera. So recognizing that research not only happens within our territory, but also externally, nationally, and internationally as well. But of course, looking really to support the unique needs and ambitions of research. So So thank you so much for this question. Next, I think we only have time for a few more questions. So this next question that we can answer is, can the office keep us continually informed about research events, grants, news, and awards related to Indigenous peoples and research? And the answer is yes, absolutely. That is our goal, is really to create and curate a website that has access to all of that information, you know, spotlighting Indigenous researchers, Indigenous research that is happening at the university, and really kind of working to break down those silos that I feel that we are a part of, just in a lack of communication. If anything, IRST can certainly help with that communication piece, whether it's through a certain feature on our website or through a newsletter, etc. We are definitely working behind the scenes to ensure that there is greater communication on those efforts available to whoever needs those. And I think we only have time for one more question. And so this next one is, what lessons, if any, have you learned from other Indigenous research support units and other post-secondary institutions? Have you structured IRST with any of those in mind? And this is a great question. And yes, so there is communication between myself and the other Indigenous research support units nationally, but I do have to say that there's not many. You know, probably the closest one linked to us would be the Indigenous Research Support Initiative at UBC. Of course, this work happens behind the scenes, and it might not be available through a website, etc. But we're certainly working to really model our program to the unique needs of our landscape. So working within the internal structure at UCalgary, as well as positioning it local. Indigenous research is local, if anything, and so it fully makes sense to really develop something that stems locally outwards. So working with Treaty 7, communities and organizations to really form something that is truly unique to our area. And so with that,
Amber?
Yeah.
Just quickly before you sign off, can I add one small additional piece there?
Mm-hmm.
As Bill described it, it's a small but mighty team, but expecting one small team to be able to deal with relationships with all of the communities across the country is probably a little much. So I have started conversations with my peers at other institutions in a very early stage, certainly, but with the desire to eventually have a network of such organizations, IRST-like units across the country, such that instead of Amber's team needing to understand the unique communities coast to coast, they would just need to know which other IRST-like unit they would hand a researcher off to and accept researchers from other universities. So that's the long-term goal. We do it one piece at a time. Sorry to interrupt, Amber.
Thank you. Yes, it's definitely one piece at a time. So that kind of concludes our Q&A. Just recognizing the time, I'll offer my closing, and then I'll pass it on to Elder Carrie Moore to conclude our session. So in closing, on behalf of the IRST team and those involved in this session, I want to thank you for your time and participation. We are so grateful and humbled to share this time with you, to introduce ourselves to you, and just in recognition that this is a step in a long line of things that certainly need to happen, and that we are embarking on that journey. So again, thank you to Dr. Cora Voyager and Christina Kopp, our speakers, as well as executive leadership. And although this is our official launch per se, I really want to emphasize that we are helpers. We're here to support research, and you know, whether it's your first time collaborating on an Indigenous research project or you have experience working with community, we can certainly help assist with tools, resources, and the professional support to ensure, you know, success at the end of the day happens, whatever that looks like. So thank you so much, and I will pass it to Carrie to conclude.
Tanse, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for this amazing presentation. I am very honored to know all of you, and I'm very excited about what this amazing Indigenous research team and all of the supports and from the faculties and in the UC are going to bring forward. It lifts my heart truly to hear the wisdom that all of you have to share, and how much you are in the spirit of the work that you do. So let me just offer this gratitude to all of you, to support you in this journey ahead of you. Creator, we are truly grateful for bringing this team together. We ask that the wisdom seeking that will be completed will be always surrounded in sacred ceremony. We ask, Creator, that the resources and the supports always be there, and that we ask, Creator, that this team and all of the researchers that are going to come forward to do research with Indigenous people will be done in an ethical way. We ask, as this team and all of our researchers go forward, that they are listened to and we are listened to, and that our needs will be met. And we truly ask, Creator, that you support this team and all of the researchers who are going forward, surround them in an ethical space, help them create those lasting relationships, and may all of this be done in an ethical, sacred, and honorable way. We're truly grateful, Creator, for the work that this team and all of our researchers will be doing. And we ask that their wisdom and their amazing connections to relationship will help to change the way Indigenous people are seen and treated. I truly believe that this will happen. So I thank all of you, many blessings to you, and don't forget to take care of yourselves, because the work you are doing is truly going to be important. So thank you all very much. Blessings.
Thank you so much, Carrie. All right, that concludes our session. Again, there are so many questions that were asked, and we will actually do our best to maybe offer a document at the end of this session to you. Thank you so much, and that's all we have.